welcome again. This is fun to have you in my backyard once again. I had a very enthusiastic gardener who decided to trim my bamboo, and so we are trimmed. But I have to tell you, I'm definitely done with winter. I'm more than ready for summer to come. Tyler's with me, and literally in many ways. He's been with us from the beginning in our Genesis adventure, and I thought this morning it would be great to hear from him a little bit of the story from his lens. Ty, you came from a mega church twice.
Yeah.
And tell us a little of that, because then it gives context to you stepping into a church plant for the first time.
Yeah. So I grew up in Indiana, southern Indiana, northern Kentucky border, kind of right in the tip of the Bible Belt. And much of the culture around there is really endorsed by the large seeker-sensitive church. And growing up, I always assumed the bigger is better. I mean, more people are coming, God's clearly blessing it. And so I grew up in Trinity United Church. I was saved in the mega church, came out to California, worked at another mega church. And while I completely believe they have their place, and I mean, like I said, I might not be here right now if it weren't for the mega church. I started going to Vanguard University that really emphasized this Holy Spirit worship culture. And for me, that really changed my life. And started to recognize that the culture of the church I was working in and the culture that the Lord was bringing me up in just didn't quite overlap together, at least from a leadership standpoint. And so I think the final straw was when I did one extra bridge of My Heart Will Sing No Other Name But Jesus, and they told me, you can't do that, we got to clear out the parking lot in time. And so I think that was just when I realized the two probably weren't going to go together the long term.
So how did you connect with us and start this journey 2.5 years ago?
Yeah, my mentor in college invited me to hang with you, and I guess anyone that he would invite me with, I would have trusted pretty quickly. But I came to a meeting just about the church future in Orange County. It wasn't seemingly a plan to plant a church quite yet. But what I was so compelled by was all these things that I had really longed for. A church that really just knew how to worship, created that strong culture, but was also outside of the box. You talked last week about the innovators and the early adapters, and I think those kind of things I was always told, like, why don't you just go to Bethel or somewhere and get it out of your system a little bit and come back and see how you really plant a church. But here was a couple who for 40 years had been doing ministry, and they weren't just this wacky out there couple, but they were highly trusted by so many people that I really trusted, and started to realize there is another way to do this.
So one of my favorite moments with Tyler was here in our home. The first time I asked him to lead worship, I got my old guitar out and kind of cleared off the dust, tuned it as best it could be, and handed it to him and said, would you lead worship? And he said, how many songs? And I said, I don't know. How long? I said, I don't know. I was intentionally teeing up to deconstruct that mega church mindset and to try to introduce far more of a spirit-sensitive approach to worship. And he's done fabulously in that. So, Ty, to you, what have been some of the surprises from the mega to starting in a home and then to Skyver that took you some time to adjust and to realign your understanding of what church is?
I think just orientation was a big part of it. Why are we doing what we were doing, you know? And when I started seeing people gathering around a table because for them, there was no other option. They weren't going to refuse to just look at the back of somebody else's head. And that was a beautiful thing for me, but it was a big adjustment because I was used to the formulas that kind of, you do this, you come out with the first song, big opening, everyone gets in, you got the big backing track behind you, and that wasn't the way it worked. And so I no longer had anything to hide behind here. I really, from early on, had to start sharing life honestly and vulnerably with our community. But I think that was also my greatest gift, is while worship was a big adjustment, because it didn't just mean you came out with the song that was going to get everybody riled up and get the preacher ready to preach, but it really meant we're going to go there and we're going to go deep and we're going to wait, and sometimes it's going to be awkward and it's going to be different. And so it's a big adjustment, but I think for me it's probably been the biggest gift of just actually eating around the table together, actually having people in our home during the week. That's what makes me a better worship leader, not simply just sitting in my room with my guitar, as it does, but also really like pastoring our community.
Fabulous. So coming from a mega church where everyone specializes,
Yeah.
you're good at one thing,
Yeah.
and it's excellence and it's professional, and not in any way to disparage what they're doing. They certainly, as you said, have a place in the spiritual landscape. Into our little community where we specialize in generalism, we all do a little bit of everything because there's lots that has to be done. How did that have to be refigured into your way of thinking?
I mean, I didn't have context for that. I planned worship songs and sang them on Sunday, and in a church plant, there's 3 of us on staff right now, so it really means we do all. But I guess my most honest way to say it is, there is nothing that's just prepared me to lead people into the presence of God, like sitting down for a coffee, or even, weirdly enough, getting so annoyed because I have to learn this administrative stuff that I never had to do. I just got to go out and get with somebody and hear their story and talk with them and share my heart. It has been this conjunction between trying to learn what I don't know but doing what I'm comfortable with, and it's been my best friend and worst enemy at different times.
You are an extrovert, and so loneliness has been difficult for you. Used to people, lived with guys in a shared home, and now you sometimes have to be on your own for hours at a time. I mean, I watched you struggle through that because that's part of the church planters challenge is the amount of time we're alone.
Yeah, it is. There is. I mean, we've been in our intern meetings talking through this book, The Invitation to a Journey. And I think it's learning to nurse your shadow side. The shadow side of you is not necessarily the bad or evil side. For me, I'm an extrovert, so being alone is actually my shadow. It's harder for me to be alone. But in these times, I need to learn to nurse that and care for that side of me well so that it doesn't manifest in destructive ways. And I think that's actually been one of the best opportunities to learn walking with people right now is you really do learn to gauge, hey, I'm an extrovert, but I need this today. And I'm a pastor, but I need to just go be with the boys a little bit this week, And,
definitely. And then one last question. I mean, obviously, most churches are struggling to engage a generation that's increasingly disinterested in the gospel, certainly in the church. And we've wrestled with that. Not trying to be gimmicky, but intentionally being who we are and doing what we do easily. Anything you want to say to those who are listening today that you personally have discovered and what we've discovered collectively about your generation and how beautiful this gospel really can be to them?
No, I mean, honestly, after a couple of years of doing ministry, I feel like it took me 5 years to get to the point of saying, we do this to make much of Jesus. And that connects with our generation big time. It is easy to think the lights and the smoke and all that are going to kind of be the thing that draws people in, but it really is. People want Jesus to be at the center of anything. Many people just don't know how to do it. And so I think walking with people, giving them the means, as Dallas Willard kind of says, the means of following Jesus. And so, there are no gimmicks to that. It's just that, I've noticed when I start a worship set with a song about Jesus, for some reason, the worship just elevates that day, and you can start a number of ways, but I think for our generation is we just want to shamelessly pursue Jesus. The lights, the cameras aren't going to draw us in, but it also looks like leadership who really embodies that, The business mindset, I don't believe, is the future. Especially with a millennial generation or a Gen Z generation. It really is just let's simply make much of Jesus in everything we do.
Yeah, wonderful. Folks, the church will end the way it started. We will look like the book of Acts again. If you take that in the physiological, biological, babies who need help, we end up with super old people that need help. And it's part of this beautiful journey, the narrative of life. And so it will be with the church. We've been through our ebbs and flows, our high points, our low points. But I think at the end of the day, we will look like the early church again. There will be a naivete, a beauty, a simplicity, a high relational commitment to Jesus, to the text, to the truth, and living life authentically in community together. That community may be smaller, 12 people. It may be larger, hundreds of people. But I think we will reflect him beautifully. It's been so much fun having Tyler, and I'll have Sam up here sometime and she can tell her story and her perspective as well. They've taught me so much. I've listened much. I've fathered a lot. And I feel the ability we have to collaborate generationally really offers hope for a church that has not yet seen her best in America and in different parts of the world. So thanks so much for watching. Hope today's been helpful. We'll see you soon.